More often than not, it's grey.
If Panzer Grey doesn't float your boat, fear not, because today I'm going to show you how to create a unique, hard-edged, three-tone camouflage on the new Tamiya Panzer 1. So without delay, let's get started.
That's not even Spanish, that's German.
I touched on pre-painting the wheels in the build video, but I'll talk you through the reasons why I did that now. Some armour modelers build the complete model and then go to the paint. However, I find painting the tracks and the wheels while they are off the model gives me a clear, unobscured access to those pieces, which expedites the process and allows for a cleaner result. As mentioned previously, gluing pre-painted plastic parts is a no-no because of the mess it can make and how it can compromise those connection points. So I'll assemble as much of these bogies as I can before applying that initial layer of colour. The rubber sections of the road wheels are painted in a brush using a thinned mix of Vallejo black grey, and then the rims of the wheels are treated to a dark aluminium using one of the new AK real colour markers. I'm bracing my hand and trying to spin the wheels to maintain a clean line. Trying to hand paint a circle is no easy task, so keeping motion in those wheels at this stage will serve you well if you choose to paint the model here as I have. There will be touch-ups required, however the bulk of the running gear and the tracks are now painted and ready to weather. So why the red Oxide Primer, I hear you say? Many of you are familiar with Panzermeister 36 and his insightful tutorials here on the YouTube platform. I recall he suggested that starting from a red oxide base tended to make the yellow tones warmer than the other colours may have. These pre-war German schemes used an Erdgelb or an earth yellow as the base tone, so my way of thinking was that red base may help present that colour in a richer way. I applied the top coat in a modelled fashion and I'm trying to keep the tip of the airbrush reasonably close to the model. The further away I am from the model, the more the spread of the paint and the more feathered the paint will be, so keeping it close will allow me to exaggerate that model and allow some of that red primer tone to influence the colour. I have to say I love the tone it produced and will definitely try the technique again sometime, but in saying that I'm planning on overlaying the camouflage colours shortly, so a lot of those subtleties will soon be lost. There is a heap of contradicting information as to the makeup of these pre-war three-tone schemes. Some suggest soft edge, whilst other references clearly show hard edge schemes. I did purchase some decals for this build, but I decided to go against that and loosely follow the hard-edged camouflage scheme that Ammo showed on their release of the Breeder. I debated the best way to achieve this, and I like to try and show you something new in every video. I've had this tin of Panzer putty in the drawer probably for a decade or so and set about applying it over the model. By warming the putty and rolling it around in my hands, I'm able to soften it and it allows me to manipulate it to create the shapes where I want that yellow to remain. This is an MX product, however I believe it is now sold under the AK banner, although I'm sure other manufacturers produce it as well. You could use blue tack for this exercise, however the consistency of this putty allows it to settle through the shapes and recesses unlike blue tack. The result of that is the lines you can achieve are a lot less likely to feather out and for the most part keep reasonably tight. Tamiya Red Brown, although the colour actually should be dark brown, is then applied over the model in, again, that imperfect way. I'm mindful of painting this scheme too dark, so I went on the lighter side of brown so the weathering will bring me closer to the colour I'm hoping for. The same technique is used for the masking of all those brown shapes. All I have to do is overlay the existing shapes and build my new shapes. Remember, this layer of masking will protect the layer of brown that I've just sprayed. To finish the scheme, a coat of green is applied. It's important not to flood the model with paint, but to build the coverage up in light layers. By doing that, I avoid potential bleeding under the masks and I give myself the best chance of a pleasing result. Keeping this green bright should give me the pop I'm looking for in this 3-tone, but I further enhance that by mixing some yellow green in with the mix and applying it to some of those panels and horizontal surfaces around the model. And the moment of truth, and the masking putty is removed. It's amazing how bad it looks when it's in place, but how good it looks when it's removed. The brown could have been a touch darker, but overall I was satisfied with the way the 3 colours were working together to form this scheme. Something I'd neglected during the build phase was to add some solder wire to represent the wiring that ran from the 2 outermost headlights. It's a simple detail that is easy to include, it just should have been done before I painted. However, the detail was so small it didn't cause me any issues to do it at this point. A chrome pen from SMS is then used to create the chrome finish within the headlights. I'd have to reapply this at a later stage because a varnish in the future steps dulled it out. So for your own models, save this step till one of the later stages. I could then move around the model and paint the tools using a handful of coloured acrylics. For the bulk of the metal tools, I'm painting them in tones of grey, and the wooden handles on the spade and the axe in a cork brown. The air recognition markings on these Commander's hatches look pretty cool, and I wanted to try and recreate that, and that was as simple as painting it black, laying a couple of strips of Tamiya tape in and then spraying it white. And then once all that was dry, the model received an all over gloss varnish straight from the rattle can. I picked myself up a set of Spanish Civil War decals from FC Model Tips, but it fast became apparent that the scaling of the set was completely off. It's surprising to me that someone could get this so wrong. I wasn't working from reference as such, and accuracy wasn't real high on my agenda for this one, so I did the best I could with what I had, although the crumbling decals made this task even less enjoyable. I had some fun with the numbering on the model though. It's completely fictitious. I have adopted the Spud Murphy next tank up mentality for this one. With the decals in place, the model was sealed again with a satin varnish. A hard-edged 3-tone scheme with bright decals over the top can look a little unrealistic, and a great way to calm everything down and tie all of those elements together is to add a filter over the model. I'm using an oil dot filter of raw umber, dust, cream brown and a light flesh tone. I apply small dots of each colour over the various panels, and as a general rule, I'm keeping the lighter colours to the top edges of the panels and moving through to the darker colours on the bottom edges. An unstructured flat brush is then lightly moistened with a white spirit and used in an up and down motion to blend the oils over the sections. I'm not looking to remove the oil paint as such, but to create a filter over the top of that paintwork. I move around the model and address each area as I go, and it can look a little chalky or streaky, but have faith and leave it dry overnight. Because the oils take a long time to dry, I'm able to soften the effect using a makeup sponge. That sponge helps to blend and soften the oils and the look of the whole effect, which in turn will unite those 3 colours and the decals. With the oils still at the ready, I mix in a white spirit with the raw umber and create a wash for the details around the model. You can see I'm making the mix just by adding the white spirit to the oil on that cardboard palette. It's a quick and easy way to make a wash on the fly, and by adding more or less paint to the mix, I can control the intensity of that colour. I'm keeping the mix wet with the white spirit as I go. And just like with the oil filter, I can tidy up that panel line wash with that handy old makeup sponge. Oil paints are such a versatile weathering medium and work perfectly over acrylics and lacquers, although acrylics can sometimes be a little more fragile in nature, hence I predominantly use lacquers. As you can see, I'm now able to create a grimy, stained effect around the turret ring by applying the paint and then dabbing it with the sponge to blend it in. That technique is used across the horizontal surfaces of the camouflage scheme, now to extend that colour gamut in those areas. By applying the light coloured oils and grinding them into the surface, I can create lighter tones in the paint, and alternatively I can create shadowed areas using a darker colour like a starship filth or a shadow brown. I'd usually try to create this tonal variation with my airbrush, but because of the way this scheme had to be built up, I couldn't do that with any certainty, so I figured oils would give me the variation I was looking for. Tools that had been left off the build could now be reattached, and the tracks received a dry brush treatment using ammo gunmetal. However, I'd go back and reapply this later on. I reapplied the chrome for the lenses as mentioned earlier and set the clear lenses in place. The fit of the lenses was so perfect I didn't even have to use glue. It was so perfect that I couldn't actually remove them after test fitting, so I just left them in place without any glue at all. The tools I'd painted earlier were treated to thin layers of enamel paint. The metal tools used a medium and light rust tone wash as a filter, and over that grey it helps to present the metal in a really pleasing way, and the timber handles received a brown wash. I could have used oil paints here for this step, but it was more about the colours I had on hand. Now on to some dust and dirt effects. The model receives 2 coats of worn effects. The worn effects are essentially a chipping fluid, but will chip more easily than the standard chipping fluid does. I then apply my first layer of dust using a thinned mix of Tamiya buff and flat earth. I'm focusing on the lower edges, but I'm also including some horizontal surfaces. Almost immediately I start removing this layer with a brush and some tap water. I'm looking to create a texture in this first layer of dust. I'm removing a lot of what was initially sprayed, but this will serve as my base layer for the dust. Buff is then thinned to about 80% thinner to 20% paint and dusted around the same areas I worked that first layer over. Thinning the paint will allow it to be quite translucent, which should show that first layer through. I'm looking to build up the effect rather than hide it. Weathering complex multicolour schemes like this can be a delicate balancing act, so I was mindful to keep the weathering reasonably low key. For the dusting around the lower edges of the hull, I used the oil and pigment technique that you probably would have seen in some of my previous videos. I first map out the areas I want the dirty, dusty build-up with an oil paint, and then grinding and blending the dried pigment into that oil paint. The oil will hold the pigments in place and create a convincing dirty build-up. I can pair that technique with applying dry pigments over the tracks and some on the innermost recesses in behind the tracks, and then allowing a white spirit to migrate over those parts. This will help settle the pigment and loosely hold it in place. I love these VMS varnishes, but have found the matte finish is a little too matte for my taste. So I've started mixing in 50-50 of the matte and the satin varnish. I love this varnish so much because you can literally hose it on and it self-levels and dries perfectly every time. The other thing the varnish will do is help hold those pigments in place. Because the pigment work can tend to flatten the look of the model, I have to go back over some of the areas and re-establish the panel line washes using a dark brown enamel paint. And whilst I'm using that paint, I can add in some subtle streaking. I'm adding streaks in the dark brown, but also in a colour called Rainmark effects. And by doing this, it just helps to tie all those previous effects together and adds an extra layer of tiredness to the paintwork. A couple of rounds of speckling with earth-toned enamel paints over that model again help integrate and enhance the previous rounds of weathering, and once everything is dry, the barrels are polished with a gunmetal pigment and staining around the exhaust is added using a black pigment powder. I'd been wanting to paint a scheme like this for such a long time now, so as soon as I saw this Panzer 1 announced, I knew this would be the model that would provide me the perfect canvas to execute it. The pre-war schemes that saw action during the Spanish Civil War offer us as modelers interesting options other than the basic Panzer Grey that you may be used to. The conflict saw pre-war Russian tanks levelled against their German counterparts in an experiment of sorts to see how each of the vehicles performed in actual conflict. There were modifications made to these Panzer 1s during the conflict in an attempt to give them greater firepower, which again opens opportunities for the keen scale modeler to explore. Should the camouflage be soft edge or hard edge? I think you could make an argument either way, but for me this build was all about creating an interesting scheme from an important conflict that was the precursor to the Second World War and just having a bit of fun with it along the way. Big week for the Patreon community with 3 new killer kangaroos coming on board. Thank you to Curtis Towers, Dean Dixon and Greg Friddle. These legends, along with the ever-growing Patreon community, are helping me cover the costs in creating this content and helping me bring it to you on a regular basis. Patreon is free, and once you're there, you can choose the tier that suits you best. And remember guys, this is the greatest hobby in the world. Share it with your family and share it with your friends, and let's be proud of what we do. Stick around because I got a Christmas message inbound. So there it is, 2024 done and dusted. Thank you to you all for sharing this video YouTube journey with me. It's been a complete honor and I just can't believe where this year has gone. Couple of special shout outs if I may. Firstly to my 2 favorite podcasts, the Plastic Posse podcast and of course my mates down at On the Bench. The support and encouragement you guys have given me pretty much from the start has been truly awesome, and I'm so grateful for that platform you've given me, so thank you. Of course, a big thank you to the Modelling News, who I've been doing work for probably the last 10 years. Honestly, the leg up and the opportunities you've given me, mate, I am forever grateful and I will never forget it. And thank you to Brett Green for the opportunities as well to work in the magazines, and you promoting my videos has been really awesome and remarkable. I really appreciate that. And of course, my Patreons who make such a big contribution and allow me to create this content and help me cover the costs in doing it. Without you guys, I just couldn't do it, and I'm truly grateful. And finally, to my incredible, amazing wife, Karen. I spend hours on end making these videos and up in the model room, and I'm truly grateful for your love and encouragement and the fact that you're so supportive of the things I do. Without you, none of this happens. I love you so much, and thank you so much again. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas. I'll see you again in early 2025.
Time for beer.